Did you know you can save up to 70% on your favorite brands every day? From Rebel.com has everything for your home, family, and life for way less. Every day, Rebel drops thousands of new products for up to 70% off. Brands like UPPAbaby, Nespresso, Caraway, and more. But every listing is one of a kind. So if you see something you love, you have to move fast. Why pay full price when you don't have to? Rebel helps you save big on the brands you love. Shop now at FromRebel.com.
How do you make chicken nuggets like 7,000% better? Short answer, you let Taco Bell make them. Long answer, start with all white meat chicken nuggets, bread them in crunchy tortilla chips, and serve them with Hidden Valley Diablo Ranch. Yep, that's Hidden Valley Ranch mixed with Taco Bell Diablo sauce. It's exactly what it sounds like, and somehow even better. Simple math, spicy results. Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell, a brand new classic. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only, while supplies last.
Hey, warmer from the low! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Paul Fritschner, who does such great work over at a wide variety of different places. He's been doing some play-by-play work over on CBS Sports. He does a great job over at the Field of 68, 1831 Media, and then the Rebound Rundown Podcast as well. So a man of many great trades, and we're going to be chatting with them about what we've been seeing in the landscape of college basketball with the top teams, a very wide tier. Number 2, we're going to be talking about the Big 12 landscape quite a bit because he is based out there in Cincinnati, and we did this out of the Bearcats absolutely blowing that game against West Virginia, but we're certainly going to be diving in on them, how dominant Arizona has been, and then we're going to be talking about some of the best mid-majors in the sport as well. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUNet_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, Amy does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. We had a very fun day of college basketball on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
We had only one ranked team in action in Michigan, and they had really not been covering numbers as a double-figure favorite, but on this day they do against Penn State. 110-69 the final. Penn State had played them to within 2 points about a month or so ago. No such luck here as Penn State, a nice hearty 2 of 20 from three-point range. They lost the rebound battle 44-21. They actually don't do too bad on the turnover battle. Michigan loses the turnover battle 9-5, but Michigan also went 15-29 from three-point range. Nobari Burnett goes off for 31 big points in this one. For Penn State, they just got absolutely shellacked. And then if you're taking a look at some of your top 10 teams in all of college basketball, your top over team actually plays an under. The third under of the season for Denver. So I believe that they are now 18 overs, 3 unders, and a push. They do get the win against North Dakota State, 78-71, the final in this one, as Denver was really leading throughout. They very nearly let go of the rope as it was a 1-point game with a few minutes remaining, but Denver, they do find a way to persevere thanks to the fact that, well, North Dakota State was not necessarily too great from 3, 6 of 20 from 3. Now Denver, just 6 of 22 from 3-point range themselves, but they win the rebound battle 35-33, and you had in this game, Mr. Johnson be able to step up with 20 big points. Carson Johnson, he was able to go 3 of 10 from 3 for this Denver team. They also go 16 out of 19 at the free throw line, so that was a nice win for them, and hey, you know what? You finally were able to get an under with them. Cincinnati, well, they were on to just continuing to disappoint, and Cincinnati has not been making you money this year. They are now 9-14 against the spread, and for Cincinnati, they really blow this game against West Virginia, 59-54 the final. And hey, for Cincinnati, if you're taking a look at some of your top under teams in all of college basketball, they certainly have been that. As for Cincinnati, now 5 overs to 18 unders. That is your second best under rate in all of college basketball, but For Cincinnati, they had a double-figure lead in the second half, and they let go of it because they end up going just 36% from the field. Now, they do shoot 7 of 9 from the free throw line. West Virginia was just 11 of 21 at the charity stripe, but on or off, he huffed, he puffed, he gave West Virginia 16 points, and DJ turned it up. Thomas off the bench, he was able to supply 14, so for Cincinnati, another bad loss, and they are now below 500 straight up thus far this season, and UT Arlington has been another one of those great under teams thus far this season. They did play a rare over because this game went to overtime against Utah Tech, but had that game ended in regulation, still would have went over. But final in this one, you had Utah Tech get the job done, 87-84. So now they're riding a nice 3-game winning streak. They're 7-4 out there in WAC play, and if you're looking at UT Arlington, that under percentage still right around about 73.5%, 5 overs to 14 unders thus far this season, but for UT Arlington, they lose this game actually in double overtime, so I'll make that amendment. But that said, they lose this game because they go just 7 of 11 at the free throw line. They do win the turnover battle 9-8, but they lose the rebound battle 41-38 as well, and go just 7 of 27 from 3, 7 of 20 for Utah Tech. So a very rare over in a UT Arlington game. We have not seen too many of those. And for UT Martin, another UT, we have not seen a lot of overs in their games. Just 6 overs to 15 unders thus far this season. And for UT Martin, they do a nice job holding it on Southern Indiana, 76-54. So yet another under in this one. As for Southern Indiana, they have just been a sad offense. They go 7 of 25 from 3, and they took 42 two-point shots, and they only made 11 of those. So that was not great. And for UT Martin, they win the rebound battle 52-32. So they were able to get a nice, clean, quality cover as well. If you're taking a look at some of your top over teams in all of college basketball, Denver is certainly numero uno, but Northeastern, they have been a top 5 over team, 16 overs to 6 unders this far this season, but the Pride of Hofstra were able to do a nice job of taking it to them, 80-63 the final, so you were able to get a quality under there. And for this Hofstra team, they've been a nice against the spread team as well. They go 8 of 23 from 3-point. Victory Otintu was able to come off the bench, give you 12 rebounds, and Cruz Davis, your top scorer, only had 16 points in this game, but for Northeastern, they do a bad job in the turnover battle. They lose the turnover battle 12-10. They lose the rebound battle 41-24, so has been a little bit of a less than tremendous season. Has been a very less than tremendous season for Memphis straight up. Actually, against the spread, Memphis has not been bad. They're actually 12-10 against the spread, and hey, they go on the road in a relatively tight spread game, and they get it done against UAB. 90-80 the final is. For the Blazers of UAB, they've been great in terms of taking care of the ball this year, and they win the turnover battle 16-13, but UAB, a team that doesn't shoot a ball from 3, they went 9 of 37 from 3. I don't know why they took 37 threes, but they took 37 threes. And Memphis, they go 8 of 20 from 3. Started out hot early. They cooled down a little bit late, but how about Sincere Parker? 40 points off the bench. The entire starting lineup for Memphis scored 31 points, and he off the bench by himself at 40. That's how Memphis was able to win that game. Perhaps they should be inserting him into the starting lineup or something like that, but yay verily on that front. So Memphis, they were able to get the job done. If you're looking at some of your top cover teams in all of college basketball, Mercer has certainly been one of them, but they do take a little bit of a rough loss on Thursday to Chattanooga, 79-75. The final is for Mercer. They were up 3 at the half, but then they let go of it late as they go just 6 of 24 from 3, while Chattanooga 10 of 22 from 3, and for Mercer, 33 out of 43 at the free throw line. If they sink a few more of those, perhaps they win the game. And for Mercer, on their 2-point shots, they go 12 out of 34. So not a lot doing there. Even though they won the turnover battle 17-10, they won the rebound battle 34-25. They were unable to get the job done here. Still have been a nice money-making team for you thus far this season at 16-5 against the spread, but a little bit of a shuffle setback there. America's favorite tag team has also been a really nice cover team at 14-7 against the spread. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, you get both, and you get a bundle of cash because they went outright as an underdog against UNC Wilmington by a count of 85-78. For Wilmington, they actually go 11 of 24 from 3. William and Mary matches that though, 11 of 23 from 3. For Wilmington, they lose a turnover battle 12-10, and a William and Mary team that has not been great on the glass actually win the rebound battle 37-28, even with only having one player giving you over 5 rebounds. That would be Chase Lowe, who got low for those. Reese Miller off the bench, he was able to supply 23 points. So William and Mary, the tribe, are right now providing you with some relatively good value. You've also been able to find relatively good value out of Hofstra in that same conference at 14-8 against the spread, and another 14-8 against the spread CAA team is is Stony Brook, but for Stony Brook, unable to get it done against Monmouth. 76-75, Monmouth finds a way to pull it out. Monmouth was actually up 15 points at the half, very nearly let go of the rope, as for Stony Brook, they win the rebound battle 41-37, and they shot 14 of 16 at the free throw line, but just 11 of 31 from three-point range, and for Stony Brook, 17-10, they lose a turnover battle in this one, so that was not necessarily what they were hoping for there. If you're looking at some of your lesser teams against the spread, right now your worst team is Texas Southern, 4-14 against the spread. They were not in action on Thursday, but Florida Gulf Coast now 6-15-1 against the spread, had an 18-point lead in the second half against Eastern Kentucky, and they upchucked defeat from the jaws of victory. 76-74 the final, as for Eastern Kentucky, they go just 10 of 33 from three-point range in this game. They win the rebound battle 36-34, but a Eastern Kentucky team has not been generating turnovers this year. They win the turnover battle 15-13. They had off the bench Juan Cranford supply 17 points, and for Florida Gulf Coast, it has just been a little bit of a mess for them on defense, so that was less than savory on that front. Another team has been less than savory against the spread, Riders, 6-12-3 against the spread, have to be the only team in college basketball with 3 pushes, but they get absolutely shellacked here by Marist, 81-52 the final. They were down 48-23 at the half. Just no life in this Rider team. 2 of 16 from three-point range. They actually don't do bad on the rebound battle. They only lose 34-32, but they allowed Marist to go 11 of 18 from three-point range. And for Rider, they go 4 of 9 at the free throw line. So if you had the over in that game, man, that did not help out your cause, to say the least. So another bad loss for them. Another rough one out there in the Metro Atlantic has been Manhattan. The Jaspers just 8-15-1 against the spread, and for Manhattan, they lose at home to St. Peter's by a count of 80-75. And St. Peter's, by the way, shout out to the old Peacocks. They've been a team that has actually been able to do a very solid job against the spread. They're now 12-7 against the spread, so good job by the Peacocks. As for the Peacocks, they were able to go 7-23 from three-point range, but absolutely were able to dominate the turnover battle. 12-4, they won that battle. Manhattan, to their credit, 21-26 at the free throw line, but just 6-22 from three-point range, and every Peacock starter was able to get into double figures, so that's another bad loss for Manhattan. Another team that's just not been able to get you to the window has been Southern Indiana. We hit on them a little bit earlier, 7-13-1 against the spread. Just got completely lambasted by UT Martin, and another team has been just getting absolutely lambasted, and it's not been able to get you to the window. North Alabama, nice hearty 7-12 against the spread for them thus far this season, and for our good friends in North Alabama, we have to go back to Wednesday for them, because most of the ASUN games were on Thursday, but they were one that got caught in the shuffle yesterday, 81-60. They lost to Central Arkansas, so they've been another team that just has not been able to go out there and get the job done for you. Mentioned Cincinnati at 9-14 against the spread, and then if you're looking at more of your West Coast teams, UC Santa Barbara has been just 8-12 against the spread thus far this season. It does feel like they're starting to get a little bit better on the defensive end, but they took a step back against UC Davis, 85-75 the final. Ada Mahaney was able to go out there and get you double figures once again, but they allowed UC Davis in this game to go 10 of 18 from three-point range, so that was less than tremendous. You've got a Idaho team that's right now 8-12 against the spread, and for the Vandals, they've been vandalizing me girls as they lose 73-66 final in this one. As for Idaho, just 4 of 19 from three-point range. They actually win the rebound battle 33-30, but also lost the turnover battle 14-9, and for Montana State, they did the little things. 26 out of 30 is what they shot at the free throw line to be able to get that one in, so yay verily on that front. Getting back to Northeastern, now 9-13 against the spread for them thus far this season, so that's been a little bit of a less than savory run. And then a team that's actually been pretty solid against the spread thus far this season, Montana, 11-9 against the spread after their loss to Eastern Washington, 82-74 final in that one. As for Montana, they've been a pretty rock solid three-point shooting team all season long, just 7-20 in this one, but they play even up on the glass, and they just have not been able to take care of the ball. They lose the turnover battle 17-13, so Eastern Washington, they were able to get the job done there, and it's an Eastern Washington team that in games played away from home, they have been one of your best road over teams in all of college basketball. 14 overs to 8 unders thus far this season, so they were able to get you another one. Going back to North Dakota State in that game against Denver, that got them up to 14 overs to 8 unders thus far this season as well. And UNC Wilmington, 13 overs to 8 unders, so those are some of the big trend teams that we saw in action, and we'll throw in their Penn State 14 overs to 9 unders because of what we saw against Michigan as well. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise what we're getting in college basketball right now, it certainly has been an underwhelming season. We've been seeing a few more unders and overs here over the last week or so, but things are starting to iron out a little bit more. Overall for the season, the under rate is 50.7%, 1,992 unders, 1,934 overs, and the underdogs are continuing it at 51.3% for the year 2015 and 1910 against the spread for underdogs. If you look at the last 7 days, it certainly has been good for the underdogs, with the underdogs sitting at 52.3%, 171 and 156 against the spread. Meanwhile, the under rate over the last 7 days, more around 50.8%, 166 unders to 161 overs. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Paul Fritschner out there in the lovely city of Cincinnati, right here on Coast to Coast with myself, Big XII, now a part of the Davidson Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Paul Fritschner aboard. He does such a great job over on so many different platforms. He's based out there in the lovely city of Cincinnati. So, yes, he used a cliche. We are on to Cincinnati on this podcast, as he does such a great job with the Rebound Rundown Podcast. You've seen him do a little bit of play-by-play work over on CBS Sports in the Field of 68. He does some work with 1831 Media as well. Man is a five-tool athlete when it comes to being able to cover this great game of college basketball. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at his first and last name, Paul Fritschner. That last name is spelled Fritschner. And Paul, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you.
It is great to talk to you, my friend. And Paul, I mean, it has been a wild last few weeks in college basketball. And just what have you made out of it? Because I think a lot of us going into conference play were thinking that it might be sort of what we saw last year with like a big three, big four with like Arizona, Iowa State, Michigan, and certainly Arizona remaining undefeated has been a big story. But outside of Arizona, it just feels like there's a lot of fragileness with a lot of teams, and it feels like there's a much bigger tier 2 and tier 3 than there was a season ago.
Yeah, I think the top of the sport has really separated itself when you look at Duke and, of course, Arizona, Michigan's up there. I think you can start to throw UConn in that mix, of course, before the UConn and St. John's game, which means we'll find out a lot about UConn here because they've played their Big East schedule, of course, but, as everybody that's followed the sport knows this year, the Big East is trending toward being a 3-bid league, which means that UConn hasn't really been tested as much so far. They played close games, right? They had an overtime game a couple of weeks ago, but this will be a good test. At Madison Square Garden, is UConn as good as we think they are? I think UConn is phenomenal. I think they are absolutely a national title contender. I think maybe their only weakness is that they don't shoot the free throw very well. But other than that, their offense looks as fluid as ever. They are just a supremely talented team. When you look at the top of the sport, I think there are 3 really solid national title contenders, maybe 4. You want to, throw Michigan, UConn, Houston, I already talked about, and Duke. I think those are your 4 really good teams at the top. And then there's a pretty solid tier 2, I think, as well. But it's been fun to follow this, Greg, because the talent has never been better in college basketball, and the freshmen have been so fun to watch. Darren Peterson, when he plays, has been great. So, yeah, I think it has been a fun few weeks.
Oh, it certainly has been, and it is going to be great what we're going to be seeing on Friday because you're alluding to UConn and you're alluding to that big game against St. John's. And if you want a great betting game, right now UConn is like a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite. It's a very, very tight line. They're thinking that this one is going to come down to the bitter end. I'm thinking so as well. And how do you take a look at this big matchup? Because we don't have a ton of games for Friday. I'm going to call it what it is. Aside from Saturday, the Super Bowl is really going to be making waves this weekend, but we've got ourselves a monster of a game on Friday. All eyes are going to be on it, and I think that this is going to be really a big test and could be a way for St. John's to announce themselves if they get a win as well.
Yeah, I think it could be. I would expect UConn to win this game at Madison Square Garden. I think they win it, and I think they might win it by 5 or 6 points. But from St. John's perspective, Greg, I think St. John's has flown a bit under the radar here over the last few weeks. I don't think they've gotten the national respect that they deserve. I know they've had some slow starts to games. Of course, there's been all the narrative about the point guard play, and they don't have a true point guard, and what's the offense look like? And again, the offense is what held them back in March last year. R.J. Lewis sat on the bench the last 5 minutes of that game in crunch time. The offense couldn't come up with plays when they needed it to, and they bowed out to Arkansas in the round of 32. Now, what happens this year? Can they get their offense to a point where they can beat teams like UConn, where they can make the second weekend of the NCAA tournament? I think this St. John's team is a second weekend of the tournament team by every metric that you look at with them. They just keep finding ways to win, and I think they're way better than people give them credit for. But I also think UConn is way better than some people give them credit for. I'm looking at UConn winning here tonight at the Garden.
It is going to be a lot of fun to be taking a look at that game, and it's going to be one of the better games that we're going to be seeing. Dare I say, the entire month of February. It's Paul Fritschner. He does such great work over at the Rebound Rundown Podcast and so much more. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and certainly I think that you summed up the Big East landscape very, very well. Looking like it's going to be a 3-bid league, and outside of UConn and St. John's, there's really nobody that holds a candle to those two teams. But you're also out there in Cincinnati where, as we know, the Bearcats, they've had a rough season to say the least. We shall see what is going to happen on Thursday with them against West Virginia. We're doing this ahead of that. But that said, how do you take a look at a Big 12 where I think that it's very clear that Arizona has separated themselves as the top team, but you've got a bunch of great teams that are starting to step up as well, with Kansas being able to have themselves a big week. Obviously, Iowa State is still lurking out there in the weeds. BYU, even with a few losses, we know the talent of that team, and I do feel like there's a really good tier 2 behind Arizona out there in the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, Iowa State's the 4th-ranked team on KenPom right now, and, they took those back-to-back losses to Kansas and UC. It feels like Iowa State's always due for a couple of weird January losses, but they've been able to right the ship after that. Milan Momcilovic, I mean, he might finish one of the best shooting seasons in the history of the sport with the way he's going right now. Well over 50% from 3 on a high volume of attempts. I mean, he's been fantastic for them this season. So, yeah, the Big 12, I think there's a pretty easy argument you could make for the talent of the Big 12 this year. And you look at what the SEC did last year and how good that SEC was. The Big 12 this year, I love the depth of this conference. When you get all the way down to the end, right? I mean, there's the Kansas States, the Utahs of the world are not great, but at the top is really strong into the middle, I think. And then after BYU, it falls off a bit. But I think Kansas, it's all about Darren Peterson with Kansas. And when he plays, they're a different team. Look at what they did the other night against Texas Tech. Didn't score a ton of points, but they didn't need to. Darren Peterson hits a couple of threes at the end, and he just makes that team go, and they're going to go as he goes this year.
Absolutely, and we know on this podcast about a Peterson making things go, so absolutely love that, but I am right there with you, and that's always so critical to be taking a look at. I've mentioned it on this podcast time and time again. Want to be seeing if Darren Peterson is actually going to be playing or not. That's going to be big for Kansas, and would you say that they might have some of the most volatility in college basketball right now? Because when Peterson is out there, I think Kansas is a team that can make an Elite Eight Final Four run if things break right for them. If they don't have him out there, sure, they're probably not going to be like a first-round exit or anything like that, but I look at that sort of a team being one of the higher ceiling and lower floor teams out there, with it really being dependent upon the health of Darren Peterson.
Yeah, Flory Badunga has developed nicely this year. I mean, we know he didn't get a ton of minutes last year. He played, he was in the teens in minutes last year, but he wasn't scoring at the rate that they needed him to. And this year, he's a double-digit scorer, and he's completely changed the dynamic of that team at times this year. I mean, he's shooting 68% from the field. He's having a really nice season Badunga is. Plus, you add in Melvin Council, who's having a nice season this year. You pick him out of the transfer portal from St. Bonaventure. Kansas, though, at the top, again, it's Darren Peterson. And we're going to find out a lot about Kansas on Monday, right? Bill Self isn't the stat. Bill Self's never lost a big Monday game. So you're at home, you're at Allen Fieldhouse. You have the number one team in the country coming in. Arizona will likely be undefeated in that game. We will find out a lot next week about Kansas because it's not only Arizona on Monday, it's also Iowa State next Saturday.
Yes, it is going to be a big stretch for them, and I'm very excited to see what's going to be happening there as we do have Paul Fritschner, who does great work over at the Rebound Rundown Podcast, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups, and then you are out there in Cincinnati, so I do have to bring up the Bearcats, who they find themselves more in the middle of the Big 12, and I mentioned the top teams in the Big 12 being really good. I'm not sure about you, but it does feel like there have been a few letdowns in the Big 12. I've actually been very impressed by Oklahoma State, who recently took down BYU, and I recognize that they took a loss a few days ago, but Central Florida, it feels like those are the two teams that have really separated themselves in sort of that middle tier pack of the Big 12. But how do we take a look at some of these teams like a Cincinnati, like a Baylor, who they recently played? Because it feels like there have been a few disappointments in the conference. Throwing their Colorado as well has been taking some losses recently.
This is a perfect example. Cincinnati right now, as we're recording this, they're at the under 16 timeout of the first half. Cincinnati's up 11-2. They've gotten out to some of these. Can they hang on? We'll know, in a couple hours here, and by the time you're listening to this, everybody will know what's going on with what happened in the Cincinnati game last night. But as we're sitting here right now, Cincinnati's up. Can they hold on? They've had trouble scoring this year. Cincinnati's, if we're just calling it like it is, Greg, Cincinnati's just playing out the season here with Wes Miller as the head coach, barring some miracle run at the Big 12 tournament where they win the Big 12
Kevin
tournament.
Keats 2.0.
Yeah, it's exactly right. At Kevin Keats 2.0, they go to the NCAA. He doesn't even need to make the Final Four. You win a game in the NCAA tournament, you're probably saving your job. But, there's just no chance this Cincinnati team wins the Big 12 tournament. So because of that, you're looking at a new head coach next year in Clifton. And there are some intriguing names out there. Of course, Jared Calhoun is a name that comes to mind. But I just think to myself, if I'm Cincinnati or some of these teams in the middle of the pack of the Big 12, you're good enough to score some upsets. Cincinnati beat Iowa State. Oklahoma State beat BYU. They're competitive teams, but they're just not competing for NCAA tournament berths right now.
Yeah, they certainly are. And it's been all about the offense with this Cincinnati team as well. And I feel like that's been the issue for a lot of the teams that have struggled in the Big 12, where the offense has just not been there, while the defense for Cincinnati has been great. Like, Cincinnati's a top 25 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Team that they're playing against right now in West Virginia, they're a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well. And it's been really interesting to take a look at the dynamic of this conference, because it's been all about the offense that has been able to step up for a lot of these teams, whereas in a lot of conferences, typically that line of demarcation is how well you play defense. Feels like it's almost the opposite in this conference.
Yeah, exactly. And defensively for Cincinnati, they haven't truly been known as an offensive juggernaut in decades, it feels like, right?
Bring back Bob Huggins.
Yeah, Bob Huggins is probably the name you think of, because Mick Cronin, they were a defensive team. John Brannon, they're a defensive team. And Brannon, it didn't really work out. They weren't much of any team under John Brannon. And then now under Wes Miller, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. But boy, is it a slog to watch them on offense. So, you're trying to figure out, if you're Cincinnati, what are you going forward? And in today's day and age, you're really winning with your offense more than you're winning with your defense for the most part. And when you're not scoring at the rate you need to, it's hard to win games.
Exactly. And fortunately, this podcast does love good quality slogs, so I'm always a fan of that, but no doubt about it, it certainly has been rough with Cincinnati. And Paul, want to just open this up a little bit more, because we've mentioned a few teams I'm relatively bullish on. I feel like there are a few teams in the sport right now that aren't getting the love that they deserve. Even with the loss a few days ago, I feel like Central Florida should have went into the week ranked in the top 25. I'm still high on them, even with the loss to Houston. I thought that there was no shame there. Team that we really haven't mentioned too much, Illinois, I feel like is a real bona fide Final Four team. I feel like they can make a case for being a top 5 team in the sport right now, and they're maybe not getting the cheddar that they deserve. Who are a few teams in your eyes that you take a look at right now and you feel like they deserve a little bit more love than what they're getting?
Yeah, I mentioned them the last time I was on the show. St. Louis has gotten a ton. I don't want to say they're under the radar, because they've gotten a ton of love. But I think the one thing that I want to stress in the segment about St. Louis is that I'm kind of getting the vibe from some people with St. Louis that, it's cool that St. Louis is 22-1. it's not just cool that St. Louis is 22-1. They are nationally legitimately good. As we sit here, they're number 2 in effective field goal percentage on offense, number 1 on defense. I mean, they are truly a team that if the bracket breaks the right way for them, it is not crazy to say that St. Louis could make a Final Four this year at all because they're solid on both sides of the ball and they play with pace. They're a really good, well-rounded team, and they're one circus shot against Stanford back on November 28th away from being undefeated this year. St. Louis is an exceptionally good team. I think a team that we just talked about a second ago with Jared Calhoun, Utah State is a really good team out of the Mountain West. I think they're a great team to look at. They don't have a ton of flaws either. Those are a couple of teams at the mid-major level that stick out to me as teams that you say, all right, here we are, first week of February. What could teams be going down the stretch? Utah State, they might end up somewhere in that 8 or 9, maybe 7 seed range if they really get hot and maybe win the Mountain West tournament. But, those are some of the teams that I'm looking at here. I think St. Louis, I couldn't be higher on St. Louis if you can't tell, Greg.
Oh, I love the St. Louis team as well. And you'd think that a team that has Robbie Avila in there, it's like, oh, he's going to be the star guy and everything like that. No, like Brady Dunlap a few days ago against Davidson was like their number 8 scorer was the guy that was leading the way. It's a whole greater than the sum of its parts team with a superstar on there. So I am right there with you. I'm bullish on them. I took Utah State on the money line against New Mexico earlier in this week. So I am right there with you with Utah State. They lead the country in turnovers generated on a per possession basis away from home. So love both of those two teams, and I love having you aboard, Paul, because you do such a great job looking at this great game of college basketball. You're based out there in the great Midwest, gauging a little bit of everything, and I mentioned it before, you're doing work at like 100 billion different networks, and you're doing so also well. So love the good people at home. Know it's all tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. The Rebound Rundown, it's a daily podcast that I do. It's about 10 or 15 minutes a day, every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, to give you an idea of what's going on around college basketball. So make sure you subscribe to that wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll have a couple of play-by-play games on CBS Sports Network coming up here. I have a couple of CAA games in February, and just cruising along, a month away from March, Greg. We love it.
Oh, absolutely. It is going to be a tremendous next month or so in February, and then the madness begins on March, and we've got Paul doing a great job gauging it all, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So a big thanks to Paul for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and coming in next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we some big shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Paul Fritschner. He does great work over at the Big East Digital Network, the Rebound Rundown Podcast, the Field of 68, and so much more. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So a big thanks to Paul for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Friday as we hit some big shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order, which today is time order. We don't have any extra games, no frills. It's a very small board to say the least, but hey, we've got 9 games of fun, and how about if we do get things started with 871, 872 Loyola Chicago on the road against Davidson. Davidson, a favorite of 10.5 to 11.5 points, so on this game between 138.5 to 139.5, and I did set my total at 136. I'm in on the under, mainly because I just don't think that you get enough possessions in this game for the over. Both of these teams are clocking in outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. In the case of Loyola Chicago, 307th in the country. Davidson, they're 344th, and Davidson is by far the better offense in this one for Loyola Chicago. It's just been all sorts of rough for them. They have not been able to get it dialed up from three-point range, and they're allowing opponents to shoot 38% from three-point range, which is the biggest thing that could put this total in peril because they just have not been great with that regard. They're outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Davidson team that you don't have a single guy that really gives you over 5 rebounds per game. So Miles Rubin, who gives you 2.5 blocks, 6+ rebounds per game for Loyola Chicago, going to be the best low post presence, but Davidson is shooting about 36.8% from three-point range, and it's just a well tied together collective for this Davidson team that's not going to be under duress. Yes, Loyola Chicago outside the top 335 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. For Davidson right now, Robert Blums is your top scorer with 11.5 points, shoots 42% per three, but then Parker Fredrickson shoots 40% per three, 10 points per contest. Nick Koval is able to throw in there 7 points, shoots 90% of the free throw line, mid-33 point shooter. Hunter Adam, 44% 3-point shooter at 6'8". So all these guys are doing a great job as a collective. It's a team that is a bit fragile on the inside for Davidson. Country average team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and with their own 2-point shooting percentage or country average outside the top 250 in terms of the opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. I will say this about Davidson in a cover spot, and I am going to be willing to lay it. I did set them as a 12-point favorite, but I do keep in mind that Davidson is shooting less than 67.5% of the free throw line. That's outside the top 315 in all of college basketball, but Loyola Chicago right there. They shoot 68% of the free throw line. That's outside the top 300 as well, and it's a Loyola Chicago team that they're only shooting about 31% per three. Getting back Xavier Amos has helped. He's been able to give the team 11.5 points per contest, but does not shoot it well from three, and as a matter of fact, you look at your top 6 scorers right now for Loyola Chicago, Cade Dodson is the lone guy that shoots above 32% per three at 35%, 10 points per contest. Justin Moore has been able to give you more with about 12 points per game. He has been a little bit banged up, should be good to go in this game, but for Loyola Chicago, with the way that they don't generate turnovers, the way that they give it up from three, and the way that Loyola Chicago just does not execute the little things, they're outside the top 300 in terms of ball security. I think that Davidson gets the job done in a slog. And on the underside, I told 136, I'm willing to lay up to 11.5 with Davidson, 873, 874. Brown is going to be on the road against Yale. What can Brown do for you? Well, they get the cover, they're going to be able to make you some money, and they are finding themselves as very sizable underdogs here, as right now you're finding them pretty much across the board as a 15.5 point underdog. Total on this game, it is 139.5. I was seeing a 15 before, and 15 would be my max lay with Yale, as I did make my number at a 15.5. Brown has been awful with their offense. They are outside the top 330 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. I will say they actually average more points per possession when they're away from home rather than at home. The big issue for Brown is that they just have no outside shooting. They are 328th in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. Down low, they've been outside the top 300 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Very rock solid defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. 93rd in the country, and they've been a top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers, but now they run into a Yale bunch that has been a top 8 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. We'll say, though, for Yale, they're outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. So even though they're playing at a slow tempo, right around about 315th in terms of total possessions per game, they do play higher scoring games, with Nick Townsend lighting up 53% 3-point shooter, 17 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Samson Altinen has been able to give you about 9 points, 6 rebounds per game, so he's been able to do a good job hauling in there those boards. And then you've got someone like an Isaac Salazar, who also gives you some good versatility, 12 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists per contest for a Yale team that they do a great job taking care of the ball. Top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They also don't put you on the free throw line. They're a top 75 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, but have been a little bit fragile down low outside the top 175 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And I do think that that's going to be just enough for this Brown team to remain somewhat lively. Like I said, 15 is my absolute max lay with this Yale bunch, but I think that Brown can find a few holes inside with Landon Lewis, give you 15.5 points, 7 boards, and then Jeremiah Jenkins has been a nice do-it-all sort of guy. 9 points, 5.5 assists, steal-and-a-half per contest. Adrian Ochino has been able to give you double figures as well, but really doesn't shoot it well from 3-point range. And I will say, getting back to Landon Lewis, 21 plus points in 3 of the last 5 games, so it has been a Brown team that has been able to get a little bit more out of him, and it is a Brown team that's starting to give up more points as well. They've given up at least 69 points in 3 of their last 5 games, so it is a Brown team that, even though they're slow, they're outside the top 235 in terms of total possessions per game. I do think that Yale going to be able to do just enough to be able to get you the over and just enough to be able to cover this number. I did set my line at 15.5, so one to lay up to 15 with Yale. Made my total 143.5, so I like the over. 875, 876. You've got VCU playing goes to Dayton. Dayton is a underdog of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 149 to 149.5 is a total. I made a total of a 148. I do like the under. You've got a pair of teams that are playing somewhat fast, but not necessarily just gunning it. 144th is where Dayton is in terms of total possessions per game. VCU 134th, so very much equals there. The VCU defense has been solid, 91st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Dayton is actually number 50. Dayton, their forte has been generating turnovers. They're a top 10 team in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. I will say they are one of those classic teams that sort of gambles for turnovers, though, because they do leave themselves open to teams being able to knock down threes. Right now for Dayton, they are allowing teams in a roadside shoot score venue to shoot 39.1% from 3-point range as well, outside the top 310 in all of college basketball. And with this VCU bunch. They do just a really good job as a collective in terms of being able to contribute and find some scoring, with Terrence Hill right now leading the way. He's been able to supply 14.5 points, 2.5 assists, does shoot 40% from three-point. And VCU as a whole, they're a top 60 team with their three-point shooting percentage at right around about 36.5%. They've been a top 30 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per-possession basis as well, so they find a way to be able to get to the free throw line. They themselves, VCU, outside the top 175 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, though. Dayton has really fallen off with regards to their own three-point shooting as well. For the Dayton squad last year, they were one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. That is really why they're down 245th this season, though I will say they've been able to shoot a little bit better from three-point range when they've been away from them at about 32.5% from three-point range, so that's been a little bit of an improvement for them, but with this VCU team, they do a nice job as a collective on the glass, as well as they do find themselves in the top 125 in terms of rebound percentages, despite only really having two guys that give you over 4.3 rebounds per game. Laser Djokovic, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 37% per three at 6'10", and then Barry Evans is a do-it-all guy, 7.5 points, steal, pair of assists, 5 rebounds per game. And for Dayton, I do think that they hold in this game with, for one, the way that they generate turnovers, and two, this is a Dayton team that has been able to do a pretty solid job themselves in terms of being able to lock down inside. They've been a top 150 team in terms of both their own two-point shooting percentage and opponent's two-point shooting percentage. Javon Bennett has been able to supply 16 points, a trio of assists, only shoots in the mid-30s from three-point, and they were dealing with an injury to 7'1" Emil Latang, but he's good to go. He's been able to give the team double figures in each of the last 3 games. At 7'1", he actually shoots a little bit above 30% from three-point range, and this is a Dayton team that has been good at getting to the free throw line, top 30 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per-possession basis, and they do shoot 76% at the free throw line. That's a top 75 mark in the country. Keontae Jones give you 8.5 points, 5.5 boards, steal per contest, like his versatility, and Jordan Durcock has really been able to come on strong. He was a big reason why the team had the triumph that they did against St. Bonaventure with 18 points, 5 boards off the bench, and I do think that for Dayton, they do just enough to remain lively, and I do think that Dayton going to be able to generate some turnovers here to be able to keep this total under. I did set my total at a 148, so I like the under with Dayton. Made them a 6-point dog, so 6.5 plus, I'm willing to take those points. 677, 678, it is Bradley, and they're going to be on the road against Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa, a 2.5 to a 3.5 point favorite. 131.5 to 132.5 is the total, and I set a total of 127.5. I like the under. You've got a Northern Iowa team that is playing an almighty slog in every one of their games. 360th in terms of total possessions per game, and Northern Iowa, number 2 in the country in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Now they are just 260th with regards to their own three-point shooting percentage, but that's big against Bradley team that is just 275th in terms of their two-point shooting percentage. Bradley has actually been a really good three-point shooting team away from home. In a roadside score venue, they shoot 38.5% from three-point range. That is a top 25 mark in the country, but I think that Northern Iowa matches up well, and that's a big reason why I'm willing to lay up to 3 with Northern Iowa. I would set it a little bit higher, but Northern Iowa in a nip and tuck spot, this team has been terrible at the free throw line, currently shooting nice already 67.3% of the free throw line. That's a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball, but Trey Campbell, Leon Bond, they've been able to combine for 25 points per game. Bond is able to shoot 39% from 3, gives you 5.5 boards per contest. Northern Iowa not going to give themselves any sort of second and third chances. They are a bottom 20 team in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but they've also done a nice job in terms of not allowing second and third chances. This team is 24th in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. This is a Bradley team that will give up a few second and third chances away from them. About 30.1% of opponents' missed shots do become an offensive rebound, even with 7'2" Ahmet Janovic being able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per game. Will Hornseth for Northern Iowa's come on strong with about 10 points. He's been able to supply about 4.5 boards, just under 2 assists per game. Just as a collective, it's a Northern Iowa team that's doing a good job, flowing good, clean offense, being a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And that's big because Bradley, their main forte, has been generating turnovers. This is a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. That number has been able to travel relatively well, and for Bradley, you've been able to get a lot out of Jaquan Johnson. 16.5 points, 3 steals, 3.5 assists, shoots 37.5% per 3, and Alex Ubiarse, he shoots 42% from the outside, but with the way that Northern Iowa guards the three-point line, the way that they take care of the ball, they mitigate all the strengths that Bradley has, and I do think that Northern Iowa on their home floor really gets things slowed down. It's Bradley, more of a mid-tempo team, about 159th in terms of total possessions per game. Made my total a 127.5. I like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 3 here with Northern Iowa. 879, 880. It is the Drake on the road against Illinois State, and Illinois State does find themselves as a good size favorite here of 9.5 to 10.5 points. So it's game 143.5 to 144.5. I like the under. I saw my total 141.5. Now, if you look at Drake and their overall season numbers, they are outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but one of the most strange home and road splits that you're going to find in all of college basketball with regards to their defensive numbers. As for the Drake team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis when they're away from home, this actually ascends in into the top 193rd in the country compared to being 330th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, and they're pretty strong on the inside. 66th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage in a road or neutral court venue. It's an Illinois State team that's been dominant at home on defense. They are 3rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and what should be a mid-tempo game. Illinois State 235th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Drake is 216th, and to the credit of Drake, this is a team that does a very good job in terms of valuing the ball, not turning it over. In terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, 45th in the country, and Illinois State is not a team that's going to go out there and generate a bunch of turnovers. They've been a country average team in terms of taking care of the ball, and this is not a Drake team that's going to be going and generating a bunch of turnovers either, but what Illinois State has done a really nice job of is not allowing second and third chances. Top 35 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and they become more of a country average 3-point shooting team with Johnny Kinzinger just not shooting it from 3 the way that he has in the past. 11.5 points, only 29.7% 3-point shooting, but Bone Skunberg, Landon Wolf, Terry Coleman all shoot at least 38.8% from 3. Wolf gives you 6.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Skunberg and Coleman combined for 20.5 points per game. It's a Illinois State team that has also been able to do a good job with their interior defense. They've been a top 85 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're in the top 75 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Drake, I do think that they're going to remain just lively enough to be able to cover this number because of what Jalen Quinn has been able to do. 19.5 points, 3.5 assists, shoots 37% from 3. Andrew Alia has actually been able to shoot 44% for 3, so it's given this team a spark, and it's a Drake team that shoots about 35.5% from 3-point range. It's just creeping into the top 125 nationally. It's been a Drake team that's been able to travel relatively okay with their offense, not necessarily executing the world's greatest on the inside. Overall for the season, 176 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. Away from home, that does ascend into the top 100. I do think that this is going to be an under, though, with the way that Illinois State locks down low, but that said, with this Drake team, the way that their defense has traveled, I think is just enough for them to be able to remain within this number. So my line at a 141.5 with regards to total, in on the under, and with Drake, we'll take 10 plus with them. 881, 882, it is Evansville on the road against Valparaiso, and Valparaiso does find themselves as a 10.5 point favorite. 135.5 to 136.5 is the total, and for Evansville, the Purple Aces have been more like the Brown Deuces on offense. They're currently a bottom 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I did take the points, mainly because Valparaiso has not been anything amazing on offense either. Valparaiso is currently 273rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Evansville's 345th, and the turnovers have killed them. They're 335th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and Connor Turnbull has been out for pretty much the last 7 or so games. Top scorer with 11.5 points, 6 rebounds per game, but I do think that this team can still do an okay job inside. AJ Casey has been able to give you about 11 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. It's a Valparaiso team that at home has been allowing a lot of second and third chances. Opponents are grabbing 30.8% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That's 305th in the country, and Evansville has still been respectable on the glass. 144th in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so neither here nor there in terms of allowing second and third chances. Leaf Mueller has still been able to give you 10 points, 4 assists per contest. You've had Josh McHughes be able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. It's an Evansville team that currently they do find themselves outside the top 250 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, so it's been a little bit rough there. But for Valparaiso, they are outside the top 330 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, right around about 275th with their 32% 3-point shooting. Owen Dees is giving you all Ds of these 14 points on 42% 3-point shooting. And then to have Rakeem Chaney, Justice Air McNair, these two guys have combined for 18 points. They combined to shoot about 36.5% from 3, but for Valparaiso, all sorts of shakiness on offense. If it is a pressure spot, they shoot 71% the free throw line. That's outside the top 200 nationally. It's a Valparaiso team that's doing a great job guarding the arc. They've been a top 100 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. More country average with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that Evansville does just enough to be able to hold in there. In Evansville, they themselves have been outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Evansville only about 245th in terms of total possessions per game. Valparaiso 253rd. I think you see a little bit of shooting positivity, and I think that this is just close enough for late game fouling to be able to get you an over on that 135.5. Set by total 136.5, so 136 or less, and on the over, and I'm willing to take 9 plus with Evansville. 883, 884, Southern Illinois. They play some Murray State. Murray State is between a 1-point favorite to a 1.5 point underdog. So on this game, it's 159.5. Set by total 158.5, so I'm going to be in on the under, mainly because I just don't think the Southern Illinois does their part with the total, and that's a big reason why I like Murray State here on the money line. I said Murray State as a 4.5 point favorite. With Murray State, they are just the by far better offense in this game. 31st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in a road/should-score venue, and Southern Illinois turned 80th in terms of points per possession overall, 359th in terms of free throw shooting percentage. They are 355th with regards to three-point shooting percentage. Now, they know this, and they're going to pile drive the ball inside. They're 7th in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from two-point range, but Murray State, they want you to drive the ball inside. Murray State is number one in the country in terms of percentage of opponent shots that come from two-point range. They're about 97th in the country in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, so they've done a great job guarding there. They themselves are a top 65 team with their own two-point shooting percentage, and have a trio of guys for Murray State that have been able to give you 13.5 plus points per contest. Fred King, he's remained low post presence, 13.5 points, pair of blocks, 9 rebounds per game. Ramad Doman, 13.5 points, shoots 39% for three. Javon Jackson, 40% three-point shooter, 16.5 points per game. They all work in tandem with one another. Now, it is a Murray State team that's about country average in terms of taking care of the ball, but Southern Illinois, they're well outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis as well. And if Murray State needs to knock down free throws to be able to win this game, they do shoot 76.5% at the free throw line. That is a top 50 mark in the country. And again, for Southern Illinois being a bottom 10 team in the country with regards to their free throw shooting percentage at home, they shoot 63.4% at the free throw line at home. That's an issue with only one double-figure scorer, Kel Ronhouse, to be able to give you 14 points per game. And then you do have LGB squared in Rollins and Prince LGB, who have been able to combine for about 17.5 points per game between the two of them. You get about 12.5 rebounds per game. And Southern Illinois, not a bad rebounding team. They've been in the top 150 with that regard, but they do a good job in terms of guarding the three-point line. They're a top 50 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, country average team with regards to their low post play, and with the Southern Illinois team having a tough time being able to take care of the ball, I do think that is going to lead to an under, and Murray State getting the job done. So Murray State is 4.5 point favorite, like them on the money line /laying a point, and I'm in on that under 885, 886. So you've got UConn on the road against St. John's, and St. John's is a underdog here of 1.5 to 2 points, 144 to 144.5 is the total, made a total of 145.5. I like the over. I think that this is going to be a tight game with late game falling that does push you over, and I do think that you're going to get a bit of a tempo war for UConn. They're 257th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. St. John's is 37th, and St. John's does a really good job in terms of maximizing possessions in the way that they grab second and third chances. This team is 18th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. UConn is 49th, and this UConn team is a better team defensively. They are in the top 8 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. St. John's more around about 27th, but St. John's defense does ascend to 15th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. Recognize that it's going to be a good UConn crowd because UConn always travels well to the great state of New York, especially the Madison Square Garden games, and you've had solo ball honestly not shooted well from three for UConn at 28.7%. I think that goes northward as the season goes along. 14.5 points per game. Terrace Reed down low has been great with 14 points, pair of blocks, right around 8 rebounds per game, but Subi Ejiofor, he gives you those very similar stats. On the flip side for St. John's, Eric Caravan, 41% three-point shooter, 13 points per game, and it's a UConn team that does a solid job in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 150 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but I do think that they're going to have some ball security issues against the St. John's team that is a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Love the versatility of Bryce Hopkins, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from three, but Ian Jackson, Isaiah Sellers, they combine to shoot 37.5% per three. Both give you 11 points per game. If it comes down to a pressure spot, St. John's, they shoot about 73% of the free throw line. That's just a hair above country average, but I think that's going to be good enough here. St. John's has been very good with regards to their interior play as well. They're a top 55 team in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, and for this UConn team, they've been good but not great with their offense, hovering right around about 45th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a little bit better down low as they're about 48th in the country with regards to their two-point shooting percentage from three-point range. I mentioned Ball and his issues. The team is shooting about 36.5% per three. We'll say that's about 34.3% at home, 38.8% away from home. I think that irons out a little bit, but with the way that St. John's grabs those second and third chances on offense, I think that's going to be just enough for the over and just enough for the team to be able to get the job done on their home floor. I trust in Rick Pitino here. I like St. John's on the money line. Made them 1.5 point favorite, and at a 145 or less, I like the over. We wrap things up with 887, 888. Belmont is on the road against Illinois Chicago. UIC, home underdogs of 3 to 3.5 points. John's game, 150.5 to 151.5. Made a total of a 149.5. I do like the under. Now, for this Belmont team, they've been able to do a pretty solid job with their defense as Belmont has slowed themselves out for past years. About 112th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You've got an Illinois-Chicago team that's more around about 232nd, and Illinois-Chicago games, they feature lots of second and third chances as they're a top 35 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They're also a bottom 40 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they get a lot of second chances, and their opponents get a lot of second chances. And for UIC, it's just a little bit hard to trust in them in this spot because they are 321st with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Now, it is an Illinois Chicago team that recognizes this. They're one of the top teams in the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from two-point range, and you've been able to have a pair of guards that have been able to do a nice job of stepping up. Ahmad Henderson, he's been able to give you about 13 points, and he throws in their 2.5 assists per contest. Andy Johnson, about 12 points per game, and now you're getting back Elijah Crawford in the small sample size as he missed 12 games earlier in the season. He's been able to give you about 12 points, 4 assists per game. That helps out on Illinois Chicago team that's been a little bit shaky in terms of taking care of the ball. They've been outside the top 220 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and on defense they've been very good in terms of taking care of the ball, 32nd with that regard. And it is a Belmont team that their main kryptonite has been the fact that they have been, for one, really bad at the free throw line. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their free throw shooting percentage, and they are 274th in terms of ball security. They actually take care of it a little bit better away from home rather than at home, but I do trust in this team to really light it up from three. Belmont away from home is shooting 42.5% from three-point range. That is numero dos in all of college basketball. And this has been an Illinois Chicago team that's been about country average with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. They're a top 125 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that still has a few warts. And then you just have a guy in Tyler Lundblade that's able to go out there and get you buckets at 6'6", 15 points per game, shoots 38.5% from three. And even though Belmont as a whole shoots just 67% of the free throw line, again, awful, he does shoot 93% at the charity stripe. Drew Gronowski down low, 11.5 points, 6.5 boards. Sam Mormay, 12.5 points, 5.6 rebounds per game. And with Belmont, you always think about the high-powered offense. How about the way that this defense has been able to travel low? Not necessarily a team that's going to be a heat-seeking missile with regards to generating turnovers or anything like that, but they're fine with that regard. But this is a Belmont team that, I'm not even kidding when I say it, they give up 11.3 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. Overall, they're 70th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That ascends all the way to 7th in games played away from home. They are dealing with an injury to Nick McClain, so I did have to dock them a little bit there. 10.5 points per game. He was doing a nice job in terms of running the show at the point, but Jack Smiley has been able to step up, give the team 8 points. He actually shoots 48.5% from three-point range. I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slow-down game, but with the way that this Belmont team has been so good in terms of guarding inside, they've been a top 35 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Illinois Chicago, they've had a rough time with their three-point shooting, and both of these teams are breaking so many free throws. I'm going to be in on the under. I said my total 149.5, and even with Belmont's free throw shooting issues, I did make them the 3.5 point favorite, willing to lay up to 3 with them, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Superstyle, part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Paul Fritschner, who does great work over at so many different places, the Big East Digital Network, Rebound Rundown Podcast, and so much more. He joined me in the last segment. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUDit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they me does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, give you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.